Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another amazing episode of Lead to Greatness, where we believe in helping others reach their greatest potential, and together we can change the world. Today on Lead to Greatness, we have Sean Campbell. If this is your first time, go ahead and subscribe. Hit that like button. Hit that notification bell so you won't miss an episode. Sean is the founder and CEO of Cascade Insights. Sean has been training, mentoring, and educating all his life. An exceptional, well-regarded conference speaker and author. Sean has delivered talks for Fortune 50 companies and top-tier conferences. He is also the author of several books on technical as well as business topics. Sean has been a professional service firm owner for over 20 years. Sean is bringing a wealth of knowledge into this podcast interview today. Please help me welcome Sean with Shaping Your Culture. This is Cedric Francis, and you're listening to Lead to Greatness.
My name's Sean Campbell. I'm a 21-year veteran of business ownership at this point, and I'm 51. So you can do the math and figure out when I started to become an entrepreneur. That's pretty easy. So
You're 51 years old.
51. Yep.
What do you eat?
I don't know. People say that.
I thought you was in your 30s, man.
This wasn't a positive when I was in college. They'd be like, "What? Are you 12? Are you kidding? You can't buy beer." You know what I mean? There was a time when this was a net negative, or like I started a business at 29, 30, and I'd go stroll into some Microsoft meeting and they'd be like, "Who brought the high schooler?" Right? You know what I mean? So that doesn't work out well. And it's funny, there's a guy in our business, Philippe Boutros. Some of the staff sometimes obviously listen to these, so he might appreciate a call out, but like, he has my problem. He's super great. He's our chief of staff, great guy, super smart, does all kinds of great stuff, but he looks kind of 12 sometimes. And he's like, so he's got the same problem I had, but no, I don't know. Maybe, blame the parents, I guess. Who knows? But
wow. If you're on iTunes listening, go ahead and check out the YouTube channel. You have to check out, Sean, he looks like he's every bit of maybe mid-30s, man. You said 51. I had to stop and pause. Like, man, I don't know. I don't know if it's.
Well, I got lucky. I still got all this. It's pulled back a little bit. Like if you'd seen me younger, but it hasn't even changed color much. There's a little bit, but yeah. And who knows? I might get lucky. I have photos of my great grandfather. He was a train conductor in Chicago, like in the South Side Yards kind of thing. And there's photos of him with a full head of hair. It had turned slightly gray at 70, but I don't know.
We need to get some of that water for everyone. I know where to get this youth water from. So
fair enough.
That's pretty awesome. Being an entrepreneur and being a teacher, I believe they kind of go hand in hand. Like getting the joy out of both. What separated the difference between the two?
Although I guess it depends on how you're wired. This is the key thing. There's some kind of entrepreneurs, the business is for them and about them, right? They're not really there to teach anybody. They're not really there to grow anybody. They're there to grow their bank account and have more employees. It's kind of like their net worth is the number of employees and the size of the bank account, right? And I've never really been wired that way. It's almost pathological with me. Like if I learn something, I have to go teach somebody else it. When I was like, I only know this story later, but my mom told me that one of the grew up Catholic. So one of the priests, Father Boyven, that would, come to the house or they knew him or whatever. He called me the little professor when I was like in first grade. I don't have a way to learn something and not teach it. And that's true even in my personal life. Like I taught 3 kids how to fish this year that are just, young 8, 9-year-old kids that are friends of, family and stuff. Wow. And so I roll that into the business. Like if I learn something, everybody else can kind of like operationalize that and use it. And conversely, if somebody else learns something in the business, I want to make sure they can teach everybody else how to leverage that. Like even our regular weekly meeting that we have between marketing and sales, there's always an educational topic, always. And it's funny when you think about your average business, right? How often does education really happen? Like it's usually not that formalized, right? There's like a training class, there's an event, and maybe this is more true, of course, in my business because we're professional services, but like you're only hired for what you know anyway. Right. And so if you don't actually indoctrinate people to kind of learn and teach others on a regular basis, I think you just kind of get dumber. over the years as a company. And you see that all the time, right? Company starts out really strong because they were smart and they knew something, and then they kind of just get dumber and the arc just bends over, and then they auger in 15, 20, 10 years later. And I think a lot of that was because they just weren't willing to learn and teach. So anyway, in sum, I have been surprised how much I get filled up by learning and teaching and growing other people in a business. I would have never expected that 20, 30 years ago. I get a lot of it day to day, just owning a business.
Wow. How does that characteristic reflect the culture of your business?
Well, I think a few things. Like, one thing I tell new people when they come on board is I say, don't come here if you want to just like work on your project by yourself, put it on the teacher's desk and expect an A, and everybody just walks away, because it's not going to work here. Because we want, and what I'm going to say next can sound bad, but it's not really if you do it right. We want everybody to speak into everybody else's work. We don't mean in like that kind of crazy zoo-like atmosphere where you never feel like anything's done. You know, we see clients like that where like they never get done with anything because everybody's tweaking and pulling the taffy. I mean more like, if you're going to go work on something and you think somebody else in the company is smart on something that could add value to this, you go grab them, and I want them to be willing to kind of help you out. And that kind of culture, you really have to kind of work on from the top. You have to like make sure that everybody is really willing to let other people speak into what they're doing. Because frankly, sometimes people get a little defensive, or they can feel a little worried about job performance if like other people are talking about it. And then the people who speak into it, they can't be prima donnas about it either. They can't roll in and be like, well, I'm the smartest guy in the room about this. I'm so glad you called me, right? So I think there's a balancing act you strike as the leader to say, we're going to do that on a regular basis so that we get the value out of everybody's understanding and everybody's knowledge. And I think it's great. It creates, like I said, though, it creates little challenges because people, when you hire them, they got to know that. And also you got to create some systems so that peer review doesn't go on for forever, because you can also have a loop where it just never ends. But if you do those things right, I think the end result is so much better, because I mean, at the end of the day, what you produce as a team, if you're really working collaboratively, is going to be so much more amazing than just one individual kind of slaving away somewhere.
In your hiring process, how intentional are you about finding these type of people?
Yeah, I ask a lot of questions about it. I mean, some are direct and some are indirect. I mean, I'll tell you an interesting thing about the hiring process I figured out. Like, there's so much education about how to get hired. You actually have to be a little careful that you don't get a programmed response, right? Like, if you say to somebody, hey, like we're hiring for this new role right now, right? For somebody to help, it's a presentation designer role on the marketing team. And so, if I say to a candidate, we really want a collaborative atmosphere, we really want the candidate says, yeah, I'm all for collaborative atmospheres, right? I can't believe how much I love collaboration, just like this interview, right? And you're like, okay. And so what you need to do is you need to kind of let them tell you what kind of work environment they want. And one of the ways I do that, I really make the first interview almost, 80-20 about the questions they ask me. And what's interesting to me is I learned 2 or 3 things really quick if I do that. Because some people might think it's a waste of time. Well, like, wait a minute, you don't know if they're a good candidate. You're not asking this question. You don't understand their background. I'm like, okay, well, look, I got LinkedIn. I can see their job history. I know a bunch of things. But the kinds of questions they ask will almost invariably tell you what kind of work environment they want to be in. Right. And at the same time, you also get to see what they value, right? If you have a candidate that instantly is like, how much vacation time do you guys offer? Well, it's not necessarily a red flag, but something to think about. Right. And if you got somebody else who's like, what kind of tools and systems do you have? Well, maybe they're more worried about that. Or if the first question is about culture, so I find that really, really valuable. And then on top of it, if they only have 3 questions, I'm kind of like, did you even really want this job? Right? Because we know people sometimes just robotically go apply. And then they show up to the interview and they're kind of doing that little thing where they're like, so tell me who you serve, and you're like, you don't even know what I do. Right. And then you say, and they're like, oh yeah, that's great. I love to work in that industry. Right. So I think there's some of that, but more tactically, what I'm looking for is somebody who's really shown that they've learned more than just a few things in life, right? They've had a variety of experiences. They're willing to teach and educate other people about those. There's that book Grit that made the circles for a while, that was about like, kind of the issue of grit in people's lives and like how it drives things. And I know like the Seattle Seahawks like brought the woman in who wrote it and was a big influence on some of their coaching and learning. But I'm also a big believer on that. It's amazing how often when it comes to hiring, the people we hire, and it's not universal, of course. I mean, there's people here who've succeeded who don't have this, but like, there's some moment in their life that in many cases wasn't even business oriented, where they just had to just survive. Maybe it was they moved internationally. Maybe it was they just had a really rough home life. Maybe it was that they had to pay for every stitch of school they went through by working nights and weekends. Maybe it was they did bad in school and then they had to get back and really figure out how to do well in school. That's also another thing I'm looking for, because anybody who's had like a really smooth trajectory all the way through, I don't know if they're really forced to learn something new that way, right? They're just kind of slowly accreting kind of skills. And it's only in that struggle do you actually like really feel forced to have to change yourself and learn new things. And so I don't know. It just seems to be the way it plays out. The people that I've seen do like amazing things at times are people who've had that kind of moment of real struggle in their life, whether it was business or personal. And then that if they survived it, that turned them into something pretty cool.
Wow.
Well, here's something right to it. I mean, when even at our size now, and I know this won't last forever, but we're 30 employees now. If we open a new job rec and it's in an area that maybe we haven't hired before, like it's a new type of position, there's not a model for it that we've done. It's not like, this is the 5th research analyst we've hired or something like that. I do all the initial resume screenings. I mean, I'm the CEO and I do all the initial phone screens of anybody that I feel gets passed. And the reason I think that's important is because if you very quickly hand off shaping new roles to junior people, there's a huge risk there. I mean, one of the most important things you do as a CEO is identify who should join the organization. Because you put the wrong person in the organization, it's not that just one person who's a problem. Everybody who has to then carry the weight of that person is now burdened by that. And there's no other word but burden. And they may not say it out loud, but they know it. They know if basically that person is just not the right fit. And it may not even be that person's like, may not be that person is like not smart. It may not be that person is a poor worker. It's just not the right fit job for them, right? And then that just kind of destroys whatever team they're part of. So I spend a lot of time on the front end of the hiring process. In a very weird way, I let the later interviews go to the other part of the team, because I feel like winnowing out the front part of the funnel and really trying to understand what's the archetype of the person I want, that's really one of the jobs I should give up last. Sometimes I joke, if this thing gets bigger and bigger that we're part of, what am I going to be left with doing? You know what I mean? Like, because you should be giving away parts of your job as you grow, right? I mean, obviously, right? That's what's supposed to happen. You're not supposed to still be like sending out invoices and like answering the phone and like, responding to every email by yourself. Right. And one of the last things I'll want to give up is, identifying the right people for, to join the company, because I think it's so important. And if I do ever give it up, I'll probably give it up to one major person who I feel like I can educate on, hey, this is really the kind of people we want here. Don't let anybody through the door who's going to make it hard on everybody else to work here. And I just think that's super important. A real common interviewee question is like, what's your 5-year plan? Right. And I'm like, does it freak you out if I say I don't have one? Like, I mean, it's not that I don't have a 5-year plan. It's more that I have goals I want to achieve in the near term that I feel logically build on the ones I have in the past. And beyond that, I have a different set of goals that I want to achieve that logically build on that. But what we don't do around here, both Scott and I, Scott's my business partner, is we don't regularly walk around the building going like, next year it's going to be 10 million, and next year it's going to be twice the size, or next year it's going to be 50 people. Because for whatever reason, I've never really felt like that's the best way to communicate to employees, because then they're aiming for the goal, but they're not really understanding the steps underneath it. I think what you do as a leader is you say, this is the intermediate step I want you to go to, and let's just focus on hitting that. It's just a little bit more of a philosophical thing. I like to build incrementally and gradually and keep building up in a certain direction than setting some big, hairy, audacious goal out there and drive everybody crazy about it. When frankly, a lot of times when you see guys set that out, they don't even know if they can get there. Yeah. Right. And then there's a little wave of destruction they leave behind themselves. It's a little of a contrary opinion. I know if you picked up your average set of business books, they'd all say, set big, hairy, crazy goals. A lot of times it creates probably more harm than good to do that unless you really, truly know that's achievable. And I'm all for people doing amazing things in the world. I mean, like, people have different feelings about Elon Musk, and that's fair, but the guy's launching a rocket successfully every 3 minutes, it seems, which is way more than NASA and Boeing are getting up in the air. Right. And so I mean, I'm all for people doing amazing things, but at least for me as an entrepreneur, I've always tried to balance that with now, wait a minute. If my family doesn't like me at the end of all this, and my kids don't know me, and my dog doesn't even know who I am and barks at me when I come in the door, right? You know what I mean? What was the point? Right? What was the point? Because I've always felt philosophically that this is maybe a little off business topic, but you look at all the problems in the world and all the challenges we face, and to some degree, if we just could build great homes and those were stable and we built them really well in whatever way that means for you, I think that foundation would be way better than a bunch of guys out there building castles in the sky and leaving their families to die behind them. I mean, so I just think there's there's something about that needs to get preached a little more than just this set hairy goals and just you'll figure them out along the way.
Wow. Let's dig a little deeper with culture. Why isn't culture what you give people, but is how you shape them?
Well, I think the interesting thing about culture these days, and maybe this is a little more an issue with tech, but I think it's a little more pervasive everywhere, is that culture has turned a little bit into a gift giving exercise. How many vacation days can I give you? How much healthcare can I give you? And the answer there is never enough, because healthcare is always going to get more expensive, right? And that's a shame, but that's the truth. And at the same time, how many free cafeteria lunches can I give you in these big tech companies? And how big can we make your office? And, all this stuff. And this has been what I've noticed a little bit. And this is just me personally, because sometimes I speak part of the company. Sometimes I just talk about me. Sometimes I'm talking about maybe something I feel multiple people observe. This is just me. Right. When you really look back at what people value, they value if you grew them into something greater than they were last year. That's what they value. Whether that's skills or knowledge, accomplishments, that's what they value. Very quickly, if you increase in health insurance benefits, it will kind of be forgotten by next year in a way, right? If you give people a big raise, that may even be forgotten. Absolutely. And they just want another one. And again, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I think we give reasonably good raises, right? I'm fine with that. But I've noticed that through the years, a lot of these things don't stick the same way as somebody saying, you really helped grow me. I used to be this person. I used to have this set of skills and this set of abilities. And 5 years later, I'm now doing this thing. And I never would have thought I could have done that before. And yes, compensate them for that. I'm not saying don't, but I feel so often when you look inside HR departments and kind of company leadership meetings, they're like, well, how big of a retreat can we have? And, what can we offer for new benefits? And what can we do to change the office up so it looks like, in the old days when the office mattered more, right? What can we do there, right? Or now it's what can I ship you at home for your home office, right? And honestly, it's not its bad stuff. Sure, do it, right? To a degree, but honestly, if you raise a team of managers that really know how to grow people, and you mentor them and you spend time with them and you apprentice them. And I'm not saying I do it perfectly. I'm not, but I'm just that's where I try to spend my time. I think I'm going to apprentice these people that are here so they can grow and to become better people in terms of what they do for the company. And maybe to some extent, even just become better people. I'm trying to do that too. Objectively, I've seen people value that more. And so I think when you go back to why more how you grow them versus kind of what you give them, I think if you feel like you're just giving an endless list of things to your team and you're not feeling any reciprocity, you're not feeling like it's causing a good culture shift, I might stop the gift giving and I might turn around and say, am I really spending time listening to these people and growing them? And if the answer is not, well, we'll ditch the gift giving for a while and just focus your time on that.
Wow.
That's me. So.
Wow. Talked a lot about culture. I want to shift a little bit the aspect of the company in general. Why do some companies fail to do marketing research on their competitors, prospects, and customers, but others do?
Ego, I think, is really the main reason. One of the things that's interesting about companies, right? If you take smaller and medium-sized companies to begin with, right? There's a different issue that hits larger companies we can talk about, but small and medium-sized companies, they start off and the leadership team knows something about the market, something about customers, something about the product they're offering that's differentiated. Otherwise, they would have never been successful to begin with, right? They wouldn't have gone from 1 employee to 10 and 10 to 50. So there's something that leadership team understood. Absolutely. But then at some point, that leadership team is not the one having conversations with the marketplace all the time. They're not the ones having conversations with lost customers. They're not the ones having conversations with competitor customers, for sure. And so this air gap starts to creep in. And some companies, just honestly, they won't believe it's there, right? Until it's just shoved in their face a little bit, like either through declining sales or declining leads or bad customer feedback. And we can help them research that too, right? But that's a little bit after the fact. Now you've already created some pain for yourself. On the large company size, it tends to be a little bit more, honestly, it's kind of more ego tied to the brand. It's like, we're Microsoft. So, we've always done well. We're always going to do well. Or we're Google, we're organizing the world's information. We're always going to do good at that. But look at all the failed product offerings Google's had over the years, right? So it's not a guarantee, but that kind of makes them kind of feel like they're without fail. And so they'll struggle sometimes to do research. But those are probably, it's really a bit of ego and hubris that keeps people from doing it. That's my opinion. So
what is the most effective way to do marketing research to solve various business questions?
Well, broadly speaking, there's two kind of ways to handle market research. You can do it more like in a qualitative way, and you can do it more in a quantitative way. And they each have their advantages. So from a qualitative standpoint, you can do things like interview customers, run focus groups, stuff like that. From a quantitative perspective, you can run kind of web-based surveys and things like that. And the plus and minuses are pretty straightforward. Like on a qualitative side, you're going to get a lot of discovery. You're going to understand why people are doing what they're doing. So let's say you're a SaaS company and you want to understand why people buy your product. That's a good place to start. Quantitative lets you do a lot of kind of measurement. So like, if you want to think how many people are interested in your product, right? Or what features they particularly find compelling, right? You know what I mean? Or things like that. That can be really useful. But both of those are the broad types of research that organizations consider. And then there's a lot of different flavors of it. But, basically at a top level, that's the kind of stuff you need to think through.
I want us to go into the time machine and let's rewind back 21 years. My question for you is, what great lesson that you know now that you wish you would have known then?
It's something I wish people talked about more, but you don't hear as much about. I mean, the reality for me is my identity was wrapped up too much in the business. I had an interesting experience by having one business followed by a second one, right? Some people only get one business and then that's it. And so in my first business, I couldn't really separate self from the business that much. If the business went up, my heart went up. If the business went down, my heart went down, right? And what changed with the second business is one, I got a chance to see that differently, to actually stand back and say, okay, do I really want to go make the same mistakes again that way? And the second thing was honestly a faith issue for me. I mean, my faith got a lot stronger. I'm a Christian, and it got a lot stronger after that period of my life. And there's no business owner who doesn't wake up in the middle of the night thinking stuff sometimes, right? I mean, that just kind of comes with the territory. But many times I get to go, it's not all on me. and I've got somebody else I can rely on to do this, and he's got it handled. And I feel like for owners who don't find that, it can be fairly lonely running a business, and it can also be kind of an ego puller in all directions, right? You have to find some stability in friendship and relationships or faith outside of the business itself to remain healthy. And sometimes that doesn't get talked about enough. There's not enough talk about what that causes to somebody who owns a business, right? And so I think, and again, there are worse jobs, right? I mean, I'm not saying I've got the worst job in the world. I'm not even saying I've got the most stressful job in the world. I think that's something that really made a huge difference for me is the perspective I was able to place kind of on the decisions I was making. Because at the end of the day, one of the things you learn really quickly is that as a business owner, you make decisions like all the time, like way more quickly than you would in almost any other role in business, right? In any other role in business, you can always go blame it on your boss, right? But as a business owner, like you're making decision after decision after decision after decision. And after a while, it becomes second nature. But then there are moments where you go, gosh, I hope those were right. And sometimes the world tells you they were wrong. And then you have to fix that too, right? And so you just got to have some place that you can go when all that's happening that isn't the business itself. And if you can't create that kind of separation, that's going to be challenging for you. So
Absolutely. What are some practical leadership growth tips, tools, and advice that you can share with the Lead to Greatness community to help us reach our greatest potential?
I would say the biggest one is probably figure out what you are horrible at and be completely okay at hiring somebody who's awesome at it. Don't really know how to do that, right? They're either threatened by it, or maybe it's a misplaced notion of like, I need to do it all or whatever it is. But that's another thing that changed in the second business for me, right? Is I got the chance to be able to say, no, wait a minute. I don't need to be good at everything. Like I can just know I'm not good at that, and let somebody else be super awesome at it, and let them teach me. Right. Let them teach me about what really needs to happen in that business function, whether it's accounting or a legal issue, or whether it's even just like a domain specific thing and what we do. It's a hard thing to get to, right? Because, you kind of feel a little bit, like, I don't know. I mean, entrepreneurship comes with it, this impression that you're kind of the Marlboro man out there by yourself, kind of leading the herd. Right.
Yeah.
And you have to let that go and be like, very quickly, no, I'm letting other people teach me, right? And so I'd say that's the biggest thing. Yeah. When you're looking at some part of your business that's really like broken and making noises in the corner, and I also say, like, you can't fix everything all the time. So sometimes there's going to be something in the corner just making noise, and you just got to be okay with that, right? But like, if this day you're like, that thing has to get fixed, I'm tired of that making noise, right? Ask yourself, are you the best person to fix it? And if you have the funds and the money, go hire somebody else who's a genius and like have them be part of your team, and then have the confidence in yourself that they can be a lot smarter than you on whatever that is. And also let them shine. That's the other thing. Like sometimes owners will play that game right up to that point, but they won't let them shine, right? They won't let them all the way shine because they're the owner, right? And they always got to kind of walk their weight around, right? And kind of do that. And that's wrong too, right? So I honestly, that's one of the biggest things. One little vignette on that, I remember this was actually toward the tail end of the first business, because it's not like I was dumb as a post through the whole first business. I tried to learn some things along the way, but like toward the end of the first business, I remember I was hiring a CTO for us, and my wife calls me and she says, he's going to make more than you, right? And if you know my wife, this is not my wife thinking I should make more. Like she's far from that kind of temperament, way, way far from that temperament. But but the accountant in her is like, that, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know that, because he's a genius from Intel and we really need a great CTO, and he's smarter than me about this. So why shouldn't he make a little more than me right now? He's got more years of experience than I do at this point in life, right? And she's like, okay, and I was like, but I know lots of owners that they could not even imagine someone in the company, even if it was for the briefest period of time, making more than them
Wow.
to satisfy a condition. I don't know anybody who could do that. Well, I don't know anybody, but I don't know a lot of people, is my point. And again, that doesn't make me special. It was a struggle for me, to figure out how to get to that place. You don't have to be king of the hill all day long, is all I'm saying. You just really, really don't. It's okay to let somebody else shine. So.
Wow. Sean, that is a knowledge bomb. Wow. And that is awesome. That is so amazing, man. Thank you for that knowledge. If someone wanted to connect with you and what you're doing, where should they go?
They can email me at Sean@cascadeinsights.com. So SEAN@cascadeinsights.com. And feel free to email me, even if you're not like a client of ours. I mean, we've got a pretty narrow focus, but if you're just an entrepreneur out there and you want somebody to chat with, or you're just like, hey, I'm dealing with this business problem, what do you think? I'm always happy to kind of pay it forward that way on that side. But if you're in the lane of people that we work with, like from a services standpoint, like you're a B2B technology company, you can find us at cascadeinsights.com.
Sean, I just love it. Everything you say is all about teaching.
Well, like I said, it's kind of a little pathological. I can't help it. If I learn something, I want to go teach it. I don't know. It's just the way I've been wired. I'm not really complaining about it. I enjoy it, but it's just the way I am.
It is awesome. It is awesome, man. Awesome. That is an awesome characteristic and quality to have, man. That's awesome.
Thanks, man.
On behalf of the Lead to Greatness community, we want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate being on.
Absolutely. Thank you. And don't forget to subscribe to Lead to Greatness if this is your first time. And this podcast was helpful to you, leave a big thumbs up. And also, I want you to check out our Marriage Coach podcast, the podcast with my wife and I. If you're on iTunes, please rate this podcast and leave a review and help get the word out. Again, thank you, Lead to Greatness Nation, for joining us on today. Looking forward to seeing you again on next week. Till then, remember, if you help others reach their greatest potential, together we can change the world. Peace. We out.